In the previous segment, we explored the turbulent geopolitical landscape, with tensions simmering over the Taiwan Strait and unrest in Latin America, particularly in Venezuela and Bolivia, driven by economic woes. Migration from these regions is increasing, straining neighboring nations. This backdrop sets the stage for a deeper examination of the global stage, where shadows of conflict are cast far and wide. As challenges mount in Brazil and Colombia, social systems buckle under pressure, and international organizations voice alarm over humanitarian crises. Meanwhile, in the Sahel region of Africa, unrest continues, with clashes between armed factions and foreign forces becoming more frequent. Powers like Russia, China, and various Western nations expand their influence, each pursuing its own agenda. Africa emerges as a battleground for a new wave of geopolitical rivalry. Amid this turmoil, world economies strive to adapt to the shifting winds of change. The lingering impacts of the pandemic, sanctions, and energy crises are palpable. Nations rush to transition to renewable energy sources, disrupting the balance of global power. Countries quick to embrace green technologies climb to prominence, while developing regions grapple with resource shortages, fueling inequality. Cybersecurity emerges as a pivotal battleground as well. In 2025, cyber attacks on critical infrastructure soar, integrating warfare into a hybrid strategy. NATO, Russia, and China are all in a race to bolster their cyber capabilities, raising the stakes in this silent warfare. Furthermore, competition heats up in fields like artificial intelligence, quantum computing, and financial technologies. Central banks are increasingly discussing digital currencies and alternative payment systems that could redefine global financial architecture. By September 9, 2025, the world finds itself entangled in a complex phase. Global conflicts intertwine with economic upheavals, amplified by technological races and climate challenges. Each nation jockeys to secure its standing, weaving alliances and strategies to navigate this new reality. This makes even local events take on a global significance. But what does this mean for the average viewer tuning in to news of intercepts, military columns, and diplomatic declarations? Are these mere headlines, or could they signal the onset of something far more significant? Every day, we inch closer to the brink of a new world order. But as the lines blur between war and peace, how much longer can we dance on this razor's edge before a misstep triggers chaos? The world is poised, waiting for the next move. In our last chapter, we explored how Russia is playing the long game, wearing down opponents and raising the stakes with every move. Now, let's dive deeper into the global chessboard, where other players are making bold gambits under the radar. China is no mere bystander in this tense standoff. From strengthening military infrastructure to expanding alliances within BRICS, Beijing is carefully watching the growing strain between Russia and the West. While the United States focuses attention on Europe, China is quietly fortifying its grip across the South China Sea. Its economic reach stretches into Africa and Latin America, fueling massive projects under the acclaimed Belt and Road Initiative. Although China avoids direct intervention in the Ukraine conflict, its diplomatic maneuvers and economic muscle quietly shift the balance of power worldwide. Imagine the faint hum of cargo ships crossing oceans, the rustle of maps sprawled across conference tables in Beijing, as decisions are made that will redraw influence for decades. Meanwhile, international organizations like the United Nations find themselves sidelined, their voices growing softer, their power waning. The world is increasingly dictated not by collective institutions but by the mightiest nations themselves. Technology is a battlefield of its own in 2025. Artificial intelligence has moved beyond commercial use, it's at the heart of military strategy. AI now analyzes intelligence, controls drones, and coordinates cyber operations. Cyber warfare has become as critical as tanks and missiles. Every data breach, every cyber attack, carries consequences just as severe as a physical strike. Take a moment to imagine the electric tension in a dimly lit cyber command center, the relentless tapping of keyboard keys, alert tones echoing in the background, operators racing to block an invisible, digital onslaught capable of crippling entire infrastructures. But the struggle extends far beyond Earth and cyberspace to the fragile climate itself. Global warming, once seen as a distant concern, now fuels fierce rivalries. Who will control the newly accessible sea routes unlocked by melting Arctic ice? Which nation gains the precious mineral resources hidden within Africa and South America? And who will emerge as the leader in clean, renewable energy technologies, shaping the green economy of tomorrow? These questions are not just ecological or economic, they are deeply strategic. They define the contours of global power for the next 10 to 20 years. The recent interception of American bombers near the Baltic Sea is more than a routine military alert. It is a message: the great powers refuse to yield. The conflict plays out on every front, from diplomacy to military maneuvers, from economic sanctions to technological supremacy. What does this signal mean for the world we thought was moving toward stability? The answer hides in the shadows of unfolding alliances and silent battles where no shots are fired, yet the stakes could not be higher. What happens when strength is measured not just by weapons, but by the reach of influence and the control of innovation? The next moves on this global board will shape the future. And no player is willing to relinquish their claim without a fight. So, what lies ahead in this gripping struggle for dominance? Is the path one of escalating confrontation, or will new dialogues change the course? The world holds its breath, and the game is far from over. Previously, we saw how countries from the global south are stepping out of the shadows, refusing to be mere bystanders in world affairs. Nations like India, Brazil, South Africa, and several in Southeast Asia are fiercely defending their own interests. They skillfully balance between the powers of the United States, China, Russia, and Europe. This shift shakes the foundations of traditional alliances and old power blocks. But what does this mean for the unpredictable stage of international relations? The familiar rules no longer apply. Economies are being reshaped by a radical energy transformation that goes far beyond simple market adjustments. Oil and gas remain crucial, yet the real game changers are lithium, cobalt, rare earth metals, and advanced energy storage technologies. These resources are becoming the new currency of power. The countries that invest quickly and wisely in green energy will soon dominate the global arena. Africa emerges as the epicenter of this fierce competition. With its vast mineral wealth and booming population, the continent is now a battleground for the world's giants. China wagers on massive infrastructure projects and generous loans. Russia leans heavily on military technical partnerships. The United States and Europe push development programs and strategic alliances. Each power is desperate to secure a foothold in this promising landscape. Yet, the struggle is not just about physical resources. Technology is the battlefield of tomorrow's dominance. Artificial intelligence, robotics, biotechnology, and quantum computing are no longer mere buzzwords, they are weapons of influence. The first to implant these breakthroughs into their industries, education systems, healthcare, and defense will not only boost their economies but also reshape global power balances. Amid these high-stakes moves, cybersecurity becomes a growing nightmare. The year 2025 saw a surge in attacks targeting critical infrastructure, financial systems, and government networks. Distinguishing between rogue hacker groups and state-sponsored cyber operations grows more complex by the day. This thickening fog of distrust pushes nations to build digital fortresses, digital sovereign zones where internet and technology are tightly controlled within borders. And here lies a crucial question: who controls the flow of information? In this volatile era, information is power itself. The battle for control over digital spaces may well determine the fate of nations. What happens when the lines between truth and manipulation blur? How will this new form of warfare reshape our world? The answers may lie in the shadows of the cyber realm, where no one can see clearly, yet everyone feels the tremors. The stakes have never been higher. What seemed like distant geopolitical chess moves are now urgent, tangible realities. The race for resources, technology, and influence is accelerating, and the world watches with bated breath. Who will emerge as the true leader in this unpredictable new order? The game has only just begun. The complex interplay of cyber activities is increasingly obscured as the lines between state-sponsored operations and independent hacker groups blur. This growing uncertainty fuels a climate of distrust, prompting nations to establish digital sovereignty zones where technology and the internet are tightly controlled within their borders. Meanwhile, the information landscape remains critical, as images of military equipment and diplomatic meetings dominate global headlines. Today, news travels at lightning speed, with interpretations hinging on the messenger's narrative. Major powers are investing heavily in media projects and social platforms, recognizing that shaping perceptions is just as crucial as the events themselves. Incidents like the interception of bombers resonate widely, becoming integral to the global information battle. Diplomatic channels once viewed as reliable are facing significant hurdles. Institutions like the UN, OSCE, and Council of Europe struggle to fulfill their roles effectively. The world is shifting towards a model where regional alliances and situational coalitions are gaining influence, resulting in a more fluid balance of interests and fewer stable rules. Looking ahead, several key factors will determine the future landscape. Economic stability among major powers is paramount. Can the West rein in inflation while fostering growth? How will China manage its economic overheating? What strategies will Russia adopt in response to ongoing sanctions? Technological leadership also looms large. With the race for state-level advancements in quantum computing and scalable artificial intelligence heating up, climate challenges present another obstacle. Will nations find common ground on emissions reduction and adaptation strategies? Regional conflicts in Ukraine, Taiwan, the Middle East, and Africa could trigger ripple effects across the global system. The potential formation of new alliances capable of challenging NATO and the G7 adds another layer of unpredictability. The certainty of order that once defined the late 20th and early 21st centuries has vanished. The world exists in a state of constant flux, with only those who can rapidly adapt emerging victorious. For the ordinary individual, this means that the informational atmosphere will likely remain charged and tense. As this precarious situation unfolds, how will the global stakes shift amid rising tensions and evolving power dynamics? The world's geopolitical stage is more volatile than ever, with countries jockeying for position, leaving many wondering what the future holds. Is the international community heading towards a new era of confrontation, or could collaboration still be on the horizon? The answers remain elusive, hidden beneath layers of complexity and uncertainty. In the rapidly shifting landscape of global affairs, the world is losing the stability it once had at the turn of the century. Countries are increasingly forced to adapt quickly to ongoing changes. For the ordinary person, this translates into a steady stream of high-stakes news that keeps tensions at the forefront. Scenes of military hardware, diplomatic meetings, and bold statements will dominate the headlines for the foreseeable future. Yet, beneath the surface, something deeper is at stake. The world is engaged in a fierce battle for the future structure of our planet. The fundamental question is, what values, regulations, and technologies will shape life in the 21st century? Imagine the roar of fighter jets slicing through the air, the tension of a high-stakes confrontation, where each moment could alter the course of history. Consider the strategic coldness of leaders as they navigate their alliances and enmities, each seeking to secure their place on the world stage. As tensions rise, unsettling questions echo in the minds of many. How will these global powers reshape our reality? The competition for resources, notably in countries rich with minerals, intensifies. Nations that seize the initiative in the green energy shift will find themselves in advantageous positions. Africa, with its vast potential, becomes a battleground for influence. China's focus on infrastructure investments, Russia's arms collaborations, and the West's development programs reveal the differing strategies employed. Who will emerge as the victor in this new world order? On another front, technology is no longer just a tool for advancement, it has become a weapon in the fight for dominance. Artificial intelligence, biosciences, and quantum computing are gaining prominence. The race to harness these technologies first will determine not only national strength but global influence. Cybersecurity threats escalate, with hackers increasingly blurring the line between independent criminal groups and state-sponsored activities, deepening distrust amongst nations. Our attention must also be drawn to the information landscape. In an age where news travels at lightning speed, the interpretation often varies by the source. Major powers are pouring resources into media strategies, recognizing that controlling narratives is crucial. Even routine military maneuvers gain global significance, surfacing as key points in the contentious information struggle. What if the skies above the Baltic suddenly became the stage for a silent, high-stakes duel between superpowers? Imagine the roar of jet engines piercing the cold air, as two massive American B-52 Stratofortress bombers are intercepted near the narrow Russian exclave of Kaliningrad. This was no accident, it was a calculated move in a game where every second counts. Today revealed once again how rapidly the global chessboard is shifting. Russian Su-27 fighters scrambled to shadow these colossal bombers as they cruised over the Baltic Sea. The tension was palpable, steel birds locked in a delicate dance, inches apart in the vast blue sky. Yet, after this tense escort, the NATO planes resumed their pre-approved flight path, a silent message broadcast to the world. The United States called the intercept professional and safe, a view echoed by officials in the Pentagon. But why were these strategic bombers here? Their mission was tied to joint exercises with Finland, the newest NATO member. Finland is rapidly stepping up its defense game along its 1,300-kilometer border with Russia, a line that has become a hotbed of military attention on both sides. This incident didn't happen in a vacuum. It unfolded against the backdrop of Russia's recent launches of cutting-edge hypersonic weapons, a dramatic show of strength responding to the West's steady arms deliveries to Ukraine. The Baltic region has once again become a focal point where the interests of the world's great powers collide at close quarters. Just a day before, the American Air Force had flown drills with Finnish F-18C fighters, sharpening their skills in joint air missions. Helsinki stresses these maneuvers are about defense, readiness, and unity within NATO, but in this charged atmosphere, every move echoes far beyond the skies. Looking at the bigger picture, as autumn of 2025 approaches, the geopolitical climate remains on edge. Europe is still engulfed in military activity tied to the ongoing conflict in Ukraine. Fighting continues relentlessly, and every new shipment of weapons inflames the situation further. So what does this mean for the world watching from below? Is this the dawn of a new Cold War, or something far more complex? The answer lies not just in the skies, but in unseen battles over technology, information, and influence. The Baltic intercept was not just a military gesture, it was a signal that no one plans to back down. The fight for control has escalated to every battlefield imaginable, from diplomacy to digital warfare. What will happen next? Will tensions spiral into open conflict, or will cooler heads prevail and push for dialogue? The world waits, holding its breath, as the next chapter unfolds. The previous chapter revealed how the race to dominate green technologies and control vital resources will redraw the global map over the next 2 decades. Events like the recent interception of American strategic bombers are far from isolated incidents. They act as powerful signals, signposts of a world unwilling to back down, where rivalry unfolds on every front: diplomatic corridors, battle maneuvers, economic arenas, and technological battlegrounds. But what's next for our planet caught in this escalating storm? We face several stark paths. First, intensifying conflict, every clash raising the stakes, creeping ever closer to an uncontrollable blaze. Second, a slow crawl toward diplomacy, where hard realities push powerful leaders to seek new rules to avoid catastrophe. Third, the birth of new alliances and blocs, shattering the old frameworks of global security and rewriting the rulebook entirely. Today, September 9, 2025, humanity stands at a crossroads. Which path will the major powers choose? Can they hold the fragile thread of peace, or will the world spiral into a new all-encompassing global war? Look closely, and the signs are clear. Power has shifted from a unipolar world centered on the United States toward a complex multipolar system. New actors emerge, wielding influence not just through military might but through economics, culture, and cutting-edge technology. The expansion of the BRICS coalition signals a major tectonic shift. As this bloc embraces fresh members and launches ambitious joint projects, it challenges the dominance of traditional Western institutions like the International Monetary Fund and World Bank. Simultaneously, countries from the global south roar louder on the world stage. Nations such as India, Brazil, South Africa, and several from Southeast Asia refuse to play sidelines any longer. They forge an independent path, balancing their interests in the tense power dance among the US, China, Russia, and Europe. The question remains, as old alliances fracture and new power centers emerge, who will write the future rules? And just how close is the world to tipping over the edge?